Your subconscious is like a sponge. It will just
Mm,
soak all of these feelings, all of these fears, all of your, the things you don't want to believe are true. You can't, the subconscious is unable to lie. That's an interesting
mm,
characteristic that it has. It cannot lie. It will present things metaphorically, symbolically, but it will always say the truth. It will
yes,
never like mislead you into believing something. Like it's always true
yes.
for you.
Welcome to the Intuitive You podcast, where we explore the concept of intuition from multiple perspectives, learn how intuition manifests itself, and the various ways it is naturally utilized in our world and daily living. I'm your host, Chantal Denise Gosselin, a scientist, a lifelong seeker of knowledge, an intuition teacher, and a passionate educator. Get ready as we dive into the mysteries of intuition and discover how it can enhance our lives and change our world. Hi, everyone. Welcome to the Intuitive You podcast. Thanks for tuning in. Today's subject is intuition and the dreaming state. And we have a special guest for this, someone who is passionate about the mind and wants to better understand its deep mechanism. He really wants to explore the relationship between the waking self and the subconscious mind, and most specifically, the dream self. Anthony holds a master's in biomedical science at the University of Montreal, as well as a bachelor's degree in cognitive neuroscience. He works on sleep and dream research, currently at the Center for Advanced Research in Sleep Medicine based in Montreal, as well as MIT's Media Lab in Boston. He is also an active member in multiple sleep societies, such as the International Association for the Study of Dream, which is one of the largest and well-renowned dream science organization. And he's also very active and involves students. He organized conferences and also events on cognitive neuroscience at the University of Montreal, always with the aim of sharing his knowledge and his passion for science. Anthony, welcome to the podcast. And really nice to have you.
Thank you, Chantal. Thank you so much for receiving me and your warm welcome.
Yes,
It's a pleasure to be here.
absolutely. And so Anthony and I had the chance to meet in a research context, and we engaged into some conversation, and we both share the passion of Carl Jung and the subconscious mind, and mind being intuition, and him the dream state. And Anthony shared with me some interesting phenomenon or experiences about the dreaming state, which essentially sparked this podcast. So thanks for accepting to be here. I think we have a lot to discuss. And my first question for you, Anthony, is essentially, why dream? Why your interest in dreams, and how did it all start for you?
So basically, ultimately, what is interesting for me, the most interesting phenomenon for me is ourselves, basically, as human beings. I've always wondered about the meaning of our existence and what does it mean to be human? What should we do? Where should we go? And why? So in that context, nothing is more important than knowing ourselves in the first place. And I've always had this impression that there's a lot that is known like outside of the mind. Basically, we know a lot about the world, how to build things, how like natural phenomenons work. But we know kind of little about our own mind, although every idea, every perception, every construction stems from this machine we call our mind. So it's so important. And we don't really study the mind that much. And what we study is mostly about the conscious mind, which Freud, like one of the fathers of psychology, compares to the tip of the iceberg. And why just the tip? It's because most of our mind rests in the subconscious, which is outside of the range of the vision of our conscious mind. So the subconscious is very, very big, and it dictates who we are, what we do, and basically contains a lot of our nature. So basically, I wanted to study that. And through my academic journey, I've been in psychology, and I've learned that psychology focuses on behavior, or what is displayed, like kind of outside of the mind, like basically the screen.
So the 10%,
And
the conscious part, basically.
yeah, like the conscious part, but
Mhm.
this conscious part is also like influenced by the subconscious. It's just that it's projected outside of the mind, outside of the body, but it doesn't tell you much about the internal mechanisms. Really, like we are influenced by culture and we have our
Mm.
biases. How does the mind truly work?
Mm.
Um, and so there's also neuroscience, which I was also interested in, but neuroscience is mostly about the hardware. So, like they study neurons and the brain, the structures of the brain. It's like, it's an electrical machine. And of course, it's influenced by how we are hungry, for instance, and by our hormones and everything. So it does matter, of course. But I'm interested in the in between, and I've been looking for that in between. And I found that the closest science I could study to study that precisely was cognitive science, which focuses on the mind's mechanisms such as memory, attention, perception, etc. And during my studies, I've participated in a dream study led by Dr. Claudia Picard, and had kind of a revelation. Um, so it appeared to me that dreams like are this awesome way to understand the mind because they're this unique state of consciousness that opens the subconscious to the conscious self. Um, Basically, we are made aware of what we contain inside when we are dreaming, and we get to be able to understand how does the mind can build like a fully immersive, believable alternate reality within ourselves,
Yeah.
um, and like a reality that when we're dreaming, this reality is like indistinguishable from the real world. We believe it fully, and it can tell us about perception and how like our mind can fail at perceiving things the right way. We can also generate highly creative content, which helps with problem solving.
Mm-hmm.
Um, we are made aware of the affects or emotions that are lying inside of us that are repressed or censored, if we were to use Freud's vocabulary.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and we understand how we can generate exhilarating experiences like that surpass everything we can experience in real life in a lot of cases. Um, and we can also understand more about ourselves. How can we grow as individuals? Because the unconscious is far from being just kind of like this brainless entity. It does reflect and perceive, and dreams are kind of a gateway to this subconscious, and they can be a key to understanding ourselves
Mm-hmm.
completely and achieving our ultimate potential. Yeah.
Yeah, thank
So
you
that's
for
why dreams.
yeah, and I know like it's a loaded question because dreams are such a, like you said, it's such a big part of our subconscious. There's so many things to unpack with the dream. Do we even understand what dreams are? And I know we had these conversations before, and the answer is no, we don't really fully understand what dreams are. But I think you explained it well when you explained the subconscious part. And when you mentioned problem solving and creativity, which is something we can access through dreaming, and I know that one of your interests is also linked to PTSD or post-traumatic stress disorder, or you mentioned the locked-in syndrome at some point. So can you tell us a little bit more how our dreams can be kind of a gateway to heal ourselves or to look at past trauma or things like that?
Yeah. So through dreams, we get to understand ourselves better. Um, and basically, for people, so some people suffer with recurrent nightmares and they have PTSD, and they have basically dreams can become pathological. And
Mm.
oftentimes there is a good reason for that, even though it seems like it's just something terrible happening to you. The PTSD, of course, nobody wants to be traumatized. Um, but oftentimes people need to simply cope with whatever they are struggling with, and dreams oftentimes follow a certain um, archetypal path. It's a whole subject on its own, but basically, there's a way to um, understand what the dream is trying to tell you, and there's a way to resolve that problem within the dream and simply stop having nightmares completely. So you can basically do some therapy and some psychological hard work within yourself, and science has shown that there's actually a lot of psychotherapies that are being used to treat PTSD with dreams and through dreams. So dreams can like help you directly, like psychologically, but they're also they offer a lot of resources. So you mentioned creativity, and so basically dreams can absolutely be applied to our real world problems, such as they can help us come with solutions that are highly innovative, highly creative, and that we would never think about in our waking life, because various reasons we might censor these ideas. They might be unable to resurface based on all of the logical constraints and rational constraints we're putting on our subconscious, just silencing it. So basically, there has been some studies, some very recent studies actually, that have shown how you can use creativity from dreams by incubating a certain subject of thought in dreams and collecting all the insight that is happening in hypnagogic sleep. And one of my colleagues named Adam Horowitz, he published this paper 1 or 2 years ago on Dormio, a device that allows you to a device that is able to detect when you're falling asleep and emit a word related to the problem you're trying to solve and record all of your thoughts at this moment. But what's interesting is that this moment is highly creative, because when you fall asleep, you enter the hypnagogic state of consciousness, which is full with images that are just bursting out of your subconscious, and you can come up with much more ideas than you could if you were awake and fully devoting your mind to it, your awakened mind. So he has shown that you're essentially more creative when you enter that state than when you're awake.
And so for our audience, would you be able to describe in simple terms what hypnagogic mean? What does it look like for a dreamer?
Yes. So, well, I think to start with, the ideal explanation would start with explaining what's basically what types of dreams exist and what is sleep mentation. So basically, some people believe that we're only thinking and conscious when we're awake, and when we're unconscious, we're basically just like a computer, basically turned off. This is completely false. We think 24/7. We are always alive, and there's always something happening there. So during sleep, during all phases of sleep, we're still thinking. And we are not only thinking, but we're feeling, and we're having an experience, a sort of journey every night, which we don't really remember, but we totally are. And a good term to call all of that process during the night is sleep mentation. So sleep mentation is like a broader term that encompasses all of the dreams, but also all of the subjective experience in your mind. So the hypnagogic state is the state you fall in when you fall asleep. So most people fall asleep in about 20 minutes. It's I think in science, it's 20 to 30 minutes. And when we fall asleep, we enter this state of consciousness where you'll perceive abstract colors, images, movements. You'll have body sensations and sound hallucinations, but you're basically just there's no you, there's no self, and there's no narrative. It's not like the typical dreams you'll see in Hollywood and how we describe most dreams.
And
And
we're not in Alice
yes,
in
we
Wonderland
connect
yet.
concepts during that.
Sorry, I just said we're not in Alice in Wonderland yet. We're still at the beginning
No,
stage.
no, exactly. Yeah, that's a good comparison because most people think like those are the only dreams we can have, like Alice in Wonderland. That's actually super rare.
Yeah.
And yeah, we have like mental activity all night, but most of it is clearly not like Alice in Wonderland.
Yeah.
So basically, yeah, so we shift from our awakened state and our sleeping state, and then so basically the hypnagogic state of consciousness is highly creative, and we can like reap benefits from that. There's by the way, a lot of other people that have exploited this state of consciousness in the past, before the science, such as Salvador Dali, who used a metal ball that he would hold in his hand while he was falling asleep on a chair. And as soon as he would fall asleep, basically he would lose muscle atonia, which means his muscles relax, like they always do when we fall asleep. And when they relax, he would drop the ball. Of course, his hand is unable to hold it, and it would bang on the floor and wake him up. And as he awakens in that precise moment, he is able to remember what thoughts he was just having. So he would fall asleep thinking about the next painting he would like to paint, about like an idea, and then he would come up with super creative images. And now he's like world famous, right? Super big painter that everybody knows. So super abstract images. Guess why? So yeah. But then there are other dreams when we enter deep sleep, like non-REM sleep. These are the stages of sleep that come in between when we fall asleep and when we enter REM, or rapid eye movement. The rapid eye movement sleep. We'll come back to that later.
Yeah.
And non-REM dreams are mostly cognitive. We're just thinking about things. We're having conversations with other dream characters. We're not really immersed in a world, or if we are, it's like those dreams are very boring. They're super trivial. We tend to not remember them at all. But a typical non-REM dream would be like, I remember that I was talking with other people. I had no images of them, but we were talking about like baseball cards. And yeah, we were discussing which one is better. That's a typical non-REM dream.
Or
we
dreaming about school or work. Because I remember when I was in university, I would have dreams about calculus, and then I would sometimes solve calculus problems in my sleep, and sometimes I would wake up even more tired because I feel like I was not able to like go in that deep REM state, and I was just kind of like superficially just re-looping this mathematical and just re-looping the stressors of the day. So would that be kind of that first couple of stages and not the deep REM that you're describing?
That would be typical of non-REM, but that's interesting actually, because there is a name for that precise type of dream, and it's called epic dreams, which is kind of confusing because epic sounds like this awesome thing, but it's the opposite of awesome. It's as boring, as exhausting. It's just terrible. You're like in a mental prison. I would myself have a lot of these dreams when I was studying. Until late at night, and then I go to sleep, and of course I dream of studying more and just repeating these sentences I've made myself learn, never get out, and wake up so exhausted and having made no progress, basically. Of course you can't study it doesn't allow you to study more the paper you were trying to study. It's outside of the dream. So
yeah, unfortunately it doesn't work that way.
No, yeah, of course.
I just want to touch on something you said earlier, because we did talk about trauma, and I just want to like reiterate that the word trauma, we're always like looking at trauma with the big T and the little t. And so just so that our listeners understand that a traumatic event doesn't have to be something that, you know, you experience war or something like that, life-threatening, but it can be just like a repetitive stressor. I'm just thinking about work or school even. That could be like kind of like this, if if you recurrency of a dream. And I'll just share personal experience as a teacher. Love the students, love the job, but sometimes it had a little bit of a traumatic experience, especially in the beginning when the school years start. And I remember having dreams about, you know, not being able to make it at school. I'm naked in the hallway, or I'm trying to go to the bathroom and my students keep popping in. Or I had dreams also when I was working as a server at a certain restaurant where
waitress,
as a waitress, and I shared with other servers as well, and telling them, hey, I've been having like those nightmares about serving. I have this like section full of tables and I can't manage it. They're like, oh yeah, those are normal. And I kept having those like 5 years after I was done being a server, and I'm like, wow, what's that about? So that's kind of like my vision of a small trauma with a small T, and kind of like that recurrency. And I find that I have those dreams when I'm in a situation where I experience a lot more stress in my life. So do you have anything to say about that in your experience?
Well, I'm not a specialist on trauma, but indeed, like, of course, psychology will always tell you that it's a trauma if you perceive it as a trauma. It doesn't have to be this big war thing. You're a veteran.
No.
You've seen your whole team walk on a landmine. You know, it can be small things, but of course, if it means, you know, if it has left emotional damage on you, yeah, absolutely. Your subconscious is like this. Well, yeah, well, kind of, right?
Yeah, there's something
like,
there.
Yeah. Your subconscious is like a sponge. It will just soak all of these feelings, all of these fears, all of your, you know, the things you don't want to believe are true. You can't, the subconscious is unable to lie. That's an interesting characteristic that it has. It cannot lie. It will present things metaphorically, symbolically, but it will always say the truth. It will never like mislead you into believing something. Like, it's always true for you. Yeah. So
which kind of leads us to our next topic about intuition. And just before we dive into that, I'd like to mention that if there's like a strong emotion attached to a certain memory, and then when we go to bed, it allows that daily thing to go into our long term. And if there's an emotion attached to it, it usually gets processed in our dreams, and it can help us, for example, to like process our day and store that into a memory. Is that true?
Yeah, well, definitely you can. So basically, sleep has an emotional regulation function. So beyond just dreams, sleep allows you to transform your memories from being emotionally charged with meaning, with how did you perceive these moments, and transform them into, so basically, let me start again. So they transform your memories from being episodic, which means that these souvenirs contain every detail about what you felt, what was, you know, like the how hot it was in the room at that moment, how bright it was, how, you know, the way exactly everybody said everything, every detail, into a semantic memory. So semantic memories are they're like compressed, basically, just like when you compress a file on your computer. Your brain can't remember everything, although some people can, but that's another subject. But basically, by having all of these compressed memories, you're able to remember much more. But these memories contain no emotion, like none of the details, the specific details of the moment, but they retain their meaning. So yeah, so basically, if you have like a super terrible day as a waitress and people are super rude to you, and you remember every detail of that experience, like awful, how you were sweating so much you were dropping the dishes or whatever.
Yeah, that happened once.
So the next day, or, you know, more and more over time, you'll see that you'll remember that day as having happened, and you remember that, yes, you were mad, but you don't remember how it felt. You don't remember exactly how it happened. But you remember what it meant, that it was a bad day, that you were thinking that your job is a bad one, etc.
Kind of like the essence, not the details, but just the feeling around it, or the essence around it.
Yeah.
Gotcha. Very interesting.
I don't know if that answers your question.
Absolutely. And I think that's kind of what's fascinating about dreams, and understanding why we dream. And you mentioned that dreams don't lie, which brings me to that part of the intuition. Because if we just go back to our iceberg, we talked about Freud at the beginning. So that 10%, the tip of the iceberg that's on top of the water, and so which represents our conscious mind. And then that 90%, the underwater, the subconscious, which is like our beliefs, our emotions, and long-term memories, and past traumas, and so on. And then our creativity and our intuition lies there too. And my question is, well, how can we use our dream to sort of like interpret and get like intuitive information, or answers to certain problems that we're going through, or just like an insight, an aha moment that you wake up and you're like, oh, that dream is going to push me to do a certain action, kind of like an intuitive way to speak to us through dreams.
Yes, yes. So as I've said before, like dreams, the subconscious oftentimes has messages for our waking selves.
Yeah.
And I want to cite a quote from Carl Jung that I really
Yes,
like.
please.
And yeah, we've talked a lot about Carl Jung, but for those who don't know, he's the founder of analytical psychology, one of the big, like, legendary figures in psychology. And his quote goes like this. So it says, "Your vision will become clear only when you can look into your own heart. Who looks outside dreams, and who looks inside awakens." So this depicts how important it is to look inside for answers. And I don't only have anecdotes from myself to support this, but I've also heard a lot of people talk about this and tell me how important this realization was for them too. And so I've read a lot of science trying to make sense of it. And some people have wondered about what it is that they should do in life and receive the ultimate answers in their dreams. So yeah, I attended multiple dream events, and so a lot of people from the general public showed up because they were so passionate about dreams, because they had had such an experience. So they had completely unrelated careers, but they had dreams that basically reoriented them in life and told them, like, this relationship is not good for you, and then they switched paths completely, or they decided, I should go for this career, this person, do these choices, and it turned out to be great for them. Some people have been stuck, unable to cope with death, because death, of course, is so terrible and terrifying. And even more terrifying than one's death is the death of one's peers. And it happens that dreams have the perfect solution for that. It's kind of mind-blowing, actually, how frequent it is for people who have lost loved ones to dream of these deceased loved ones and have conversations with them that allow for closure. So, people will have lost, a parent, and they will see that, they'll be suffering from that loss and unable to make sense of it all. A process called meaning making in psychology. And it happens that they'll dream about that person, and they'll have this extremely precious conversation with them, with that loved one, who might be saying to them, like, I would be so much happier. Like, I'm not, like, I'm dead, but I'm still with you in your heart, and I see how much you suffer from that, and it would bring me peace if you would stop suffering from my death and move on and grow. I would be so much prouder. And basically, these people are like shocked by this moment, and it does change them and allow for closure.
Yeah, so like,
yeah.
closure and processing. And on that topic, I would like to share recently something that happened to me. I lost my grandmother, and so she had cancer, so it was expected, but she declined also rapidly, and I wanted to go see her before she passed, but I didn't make it for her before she passed, and I couldn't even make it for the funeral. There was a snowstorm, everything, and I sort of carried that a guilt or a feeling of, I wish I would have been able to hold her hand and tell her things in person and not through an iPad, which was fine. Thank you to my family for providing that for me so I could speak to her. And so on the third day after her death, she came into my dream, and it was so almost like a lucid dream, very real, like very colorful, very potent. And I was able to have that meaningful conversation with her, and she was kind of telling me like, it's okay. And that gave me such peace. And then it was good. So I can say firsthand that I did experience what you're just describing recently. Funny enough. So.
Wow, that's good. I mean, that it does prove my point wonderfully.
Yeah.
But my condolences for your loss.
Thank you. Yeah.
Yeah. So, but exactly. And you know, we don't really have any other process naturally happening for us to, you know, deal with these experiences. So dreams are like this resource, and it's almost like like a counselor within ourselves that's building this. Well, of course, making all of this happen, and has this message for us, but cares about us. And you know, it's this subconscious persona is almost wiser than us in a way. Like, it knows these things, and that's also very interesting. How is it that smart? And there was a lot of research on the archetypes of the mind, basically the archetypes that we might embody. So it's a bit of a big subject, but basically science has tried to identify all of the archetypes, which would translate roughly as the patterns of life paths humans tend to take in their lives. And this knowledge might reveal something like our collective ancestral knowledge, or even something greater, like metaphysical, hard to understand, but maybe we are just like a reiteration of this one giant collective, or like this collective mind that's like, that contains all of the experience or nature of humanity, and we're like different facets of it, because we do repeat the same patterns in life. We do find the same lessons in life. You know, like for closure, we always understand that it is better to move on, and it's healthy, and it's like our subconscious is bringing us to make these same realizations. It's kind of like helping us stay healthy, stay on the right path. And this information the subconscious is providing us, I would call that intuition. And I personally experienced it too, not by communicating with a deceased loved one, but I kept having the exact same dream patterns, which represented the same symbolics. So I kept dreaming that I was stuck inside some dark apocalyptic world in which almost everyone had been turned to zombies. And I kept dreaming that I was like among the very few survivors, along with some of my family and friends, and we were always running from the crowds of zombies. They were everywhere. We were always trying to find that special spot where we would be safe. And over time, like, everybody would die around me, and in the end there would be only me, and the zombies would close on me at that moment, and there was no escape, never any escape. But they weren't really trying to to rip me to shreds, or no violence. They were just trying to puke on me and like share their filth on me. So and I didn't understand, like, why I'm like, I don't, why zombies and why this experience. And it was very recurrent, always the same like pattern. And basically I realized at some point within one dream that I was germophobic. So I was afraid of being sick, and bacteria really disgusted me at a deep level. And I understood that I was not afraid of the zombies themselves, but the disease. So, and at the time I was also emetophobic, so I had a fear of puking, like it was very repulsing to me. And and when I understood that, I took action. I actually kind of rationalized it, like, I'm never sick anyway. Like, why be so afraid? I never puke. I never have. I don't get sick often. And reading about how germs spread and everything.
Mm-hmm.
It was during my teenage. These dreams completely stopped from that point on and forever. It's like that intuition was trying to make me understand there's this thing about you that is sick and needs healing. And I was made aware of that in a dream. I wouldn't have discovered it as fast or as efficiently in real life, I think, like in waking life.
That's pretty powerful. That's intuition right there. Your subconscious trying to tell you something, and good for you for listening and doing something about it. Like you said, rationalizing, doing your research and healing at the conscious level, right?
Yeah, absolutely. We are like the subconscious and the conscious should be one. There's actually a whole domain of study. I wouldn't call it science, but I don't know what I would exactly call it, but it's called the name of it. I guess it's maybe a culture or a mindset. Maybe it's called the alchemy. And the point of the alchemic practice, which is like this old practice that dates like to the medieval age, I think, like very old, is to reunite the the yin and the yang of the self, like make the self whole. And in Jungian terms, that would translate as like connecting with the subconscious and fully accepting one's entire nature, being complete. And such a state is so desirable that it might be the purpose of life, is to become the one self you were meant to be, the ultimate authenticity.
Yeah, it's like loving yourself for all what you are, your light and your dark, your yin and your yang, the black and the white, all those aspects. That's
Yes.
I would agree with that statement.
And like it might take various forms depending on what kind of person you are. For some people, it's like, for men, for instance, I feel like it's oftentimes about accepting the feminine parts of themselves. It's not true that you have to be this kind of brutish, insensible self, like insensitive self that doesn't feel anything, that just does, and like always action and like a success machine. Like, no, it's okay to be sensible. It's okay to be empathetic. It's actually human and it's very healthy. So so maybe that is your yin and yang, your alter ego.
I think Caroline Misson, she uses a lot of Carl Jung's because she does a lot of things on archetype as well, and she talks about the shadow self, and that's kind of like for her as an intuitive healer, and she's much more kind of revert to the shadow self, or that part of ourselves that we don't necessarily want to see or accept, and then once you go there and are willing to accept it, then that's when the healing occurs. So yeah, it kind of reminded me that, so I wanted to share. So I have just a question that's coming up. I sometimes like talk to people and they say, "Oh, you dream so much, and how do I remember my dreams?" Do you have any tips or techniques? Like what I tell people is, well, keep a journal next to your bed. But do you have anything else that you could share with our listeners about how to remember their dreams, or if you have any tips for interpretation? I can add those links as well in the biography at the end.
Yeah, sure. So there are various techniques to dream more, but it depends. It depends on your level of commitment. So I would say,
like anything else.
yeah, of course. And of course, it depends. To complete that question, I think it would be useful to define what kind of dream you want to have. What do you want? What do you want to dream about? And I think a lot of people out there are actually wondering how to have lucid dreams, because lucid dreams are special dreams. I didn't hear the lucid part. Lucid dreams are super desirable because you're finally in power of your dream. So if you're looking for an answer within yourself, a good way to reach out to that subconscious part of yourself and listen to what messages it might like what insight it might have for you is to have a lucid dream and ask it directly in the dream. So basically, in order to incubate lucid dreams, one good way for that is starting by making yourself more aware of your dreams, because awareness is the key. In fact, lucid dreams are just like any other dream, except that you realize that you're dreaming and therefore you become in power. There's actually like a whole mechanism I could explain to why like this process occurs, but basically when you are lucid and you are in power and aware, you get to be able to ask. You can just ask it out loud in the dream, or just think about it. Your dream is yourself. It will hear you. And you might, so basically you would just ask a question and it will provide the answer, and I guarantee it. It's like if you do it, if you ask the question, you're specific and you're open to answering, and you believe that there will be an answer. There will be an answer. So how to incubate a lucid dream? By being more aware. In order to be more aware, you would like to keep a dream journal. Dream journals are a great way to force yourself to remember, and kind of keep a symbolic ear open for what's happening in your mind when you're sleeping. And at first it will feel like impossible. It did feel impossible for me, because dreams are happening. There's so many things happening, and of course your most vivid dreams happen at the end of the night, and then you've been asleep for so long, you forgot your goal. But over time you will become more aware the more you keep your dream journal. Do it every day, and after 2-3 weeks you should really start to be very aware, and you will see your dream journal, the content of your dream journal will become thicker for every night. You'll have more things to write down and be more aware. And at some point, you'll probably be aware enough to, in the dream, wait, I'm listening to what's happening, but because I'm in the dream, you will realize. And that's also how lucid dreams happen, is when you realize that there's something odd going on, and you react. So that's one way. Another way very simple, if you're very committed, is to use the wake up back to bed technique. So most people sleep 7 to 9 hours per night. So you would want to subtract 1 or 2 full sleep cycles from that. A full sleep cycle for all the phases of sleep lasts 90 minutes. So if you sleep 9 hours, you would want to set your alarm after 6 hours of sleep, to wake you up, not in a brutal way, but just so an alarm that's able to wake you up and make you aware, to bring back your wakeful self. And then you stay awake for 20 minutes. No need to jog or do anything super intense. You can just read a book or just keep yourself awake for 20 minutes and then get back to sleep. What this will do is that you will fall asleep very quickly, and you will fall asleep. You will go back to REM sleep, because that's where you were at when you were sleeping for the full night. And in REM sleep, where the most vivid dreams happen, it's the most basically lucid dreams happen very frequently in REM sleep. You'll be much more aware and awake because you were awake so recently. So this is actually considered to be the most successful technique for incubating lucid dreams.
Okay.
But it wakes you up, and of course you'll have a feeling that you slept less.
So maybe not before a thesis defense or
yes,
or something
exactly.
important, right? So the wake up back to bed technique, and you know what, as you were describing that, I'm like, oh, that's what's happening to me when, let's say, I hear like a little noise in the middle of the night, or I have to go to use the washroom, and it's around like 5 in the morning, and I still have like 2 hours before my, depending on what time of my schedule, but let's say I wake up around like 4:30 or 5, I go to the washroom, I come back, fall asleep. I find I have the most vivid, important, potent dreams during those
Ah.
2 hours, and those are the ones that I remember, that I get like my insights most of the time, which is what you're describing basically, from what I'm realizing now.
Yeah, there you go. Yes, you
Yeah,
experienced it yourself.
yeah.
I'm telling you, it works. It's scientifically backed.
Hmm.
So,
I love
but yeah,
that.
of course, then nobody wants to get up during their sleep. You will feel like
Drink a
crap
cup
when
of
you
tea.
wake up.
Nature will take a drink a cup of tea before you go to bed. Nature will take care of it. You don't even
Oh
need to
boy,
set an
yeah,
alarm.
that's it. Yeah,
Yeah, so I like that,
but
and
you don't
just
want
to,
to like the tea would be like nice, but you want to wake up
yeah.
specifically like at a certain point.
Of
So
course, to make
yeah.
it more specific, and I was just making a joke, of course. So something you mentioned awareness. So that's huge with intuition. Like, I'm coaching people to develop their intuition, and one thing I tell them is the first thing is awareness. Start noticing, pay attention, keep a dream journal, keep a waking state journal. And then you said believe. If you believe, that's another thing about intuition that I
Yes.
mentioned. And some people might say, oh, it's a placebo effect, but the placebo effect has been shown to work scientifically. So whether it's the placebo effect or not, something's happening. So good. And then patience, and I will say consistency, because you mentioned it takes about 2 to 3 weeks, which usually, as a former kinesiologist, it takes 21 days, the famous 3 weeks, to install a new habit. If you want to lose weight, change your diet, whatever it is that you want to do, exercise. The first couple of days will be painful, it will be hard, but if you keep consistency, you keep going at it, and you stay aware and you believe, then eventually you'll see the changes. So I just find it interesting that it's all the same. It depends what the intention is in the first place, whether it's to lose weight or to dream.
Yeah, and you say consistency. Consistency speaks to me a lot in the field of
Yeah,
sleep.
yeah.
It is crucial if you want to have any good sleep, any good awareness in your dreams to be consistent. So
Mm-hmm.
always go to bed at the same time. I know it's like super hard, and I can't like I struggle with that myself to be consistent, but like the more consistent you are, the better it will work. The better will be your sleep will be. Yeah, super important. So
Mm-hmm.
the same skills that you teach your patients are relevant in my field.
Yeah. Yeah,
Absolutely.
I would say clients. I'm not a doctor yet, but yes. So I know what you meant. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
It kind of, you can translate it to different things as well. Yeah,
I would have
so
said participant, so I'm already
I know you're doing research, so it's like, okay, clients and coaching, participants in research, and I get it.
yes.
Students in the classroom, but essentially, yeah, learners, right? We're all learners and teachers,
Yes.
and I think it's a fascinating topic. Anthony, thank you so much for all that. If I would ask you one last question before we wrap things up, would you like to give us, and I think we kind of covered it a little bit, but your personal definition of intuition, because I like to ask my guests, what's intuition to you? And if you had to explain it to your neighbor, what would you say?
Yeah, sure. So a bit like Carl Jung, I believe intuition is a way of perceiving information from the subconscious. So it contains all of this knowledge that we talked about, the repressed emotions, the censored
Mm,
affects, and has many abilities. So it's far from being incompetent. It is like a great teacher in life. It doesn't always have like the answer for you. Of course, you need to balance it out with some rationality and logical reasoning. But in more cases than we think, I think intuition is it's really important to listen to intuition. Um, so, like some people are like big fans of rationality and logic and think it applies everywhere. And although these qualities are very useful, um, like clearly they don't apply everywhere. Like just think about love, about our passions, like what kind of career choice should you make that will actually last through your whole life? What will make you happy? You're more likely to have good answers when you listen to your intuition rather than your logic. They're both biased, but that's why they complete each other very well. So I think intuition is not something like metaphysical or transcendental or supernatural. I think it is something very human, very innate, and we should absolutely listen to it and consider it in all of our important decisions. And I might make like a little parenthesis on another definition of intuition that we hear about often. I would like to to kind of shed a bit of light on that. So the way I knew intuition before I got into dream science was in the form of a trait. I was a big fan of the popular Myers-Briggs type indicator theory, known as the MBTI on the internet. And one of the traits that define all individuals, according to that theory, is the intuitive trait. So it puts everybody in like a. So basically, there are 16 possible personalities, and one of the dimensions that separate all of these categories together into two different groups is intuition. There are observant people and intuitive people. You can be one or the other. There's no really in between. And basically, it says that intuitive people tend to be dreamers. They're interested in possibilities and deeper meanings. They're imaginative, open-minded. While the observant people are practical, pragmatic, down to earth. They focus on what's happening and the past, and they don't really look at possibilities in the same way. And what's interesting is that intuitives are only like 25 to 33% of the population, according to statistics. And I tried it for myself, the test, and I scored extremely high on the intuitive trait. And for a while in my life, it really defined how I perceived me, and it kind of separated me, like it made me feel as like separate or misunderstood by the rest of people around me. So I was at the time trying to understand the patterns of humanity. I was asking myself all the existential questions, looking for the hidden meanings. I was watching the sky in wonder, like, oh, what a crazy world, like with the universe out there, and we exist, and we're like the only ones, and everything is like kind of bleak and impossibly large, but we're here and we're like little, but we're aware, and we're like the eyes of the universe and stuff. It's so crazy. Why are nobody like interested in that? People around me, when they look at the sky, they only see weather. They don't see the universe that lies beyond. Like, but how can you not, right?
And would you say that was your intuitive side, kind of like that test kind of provided you sort of answers or an explanation as of why you're such an intuitive person and you're asking yourself all these questions? Would that be the case?
Well, the point I'm making is that it's actually kind of a bad definition of intuition. I think like it puts everybody in like the same basket. You're either observant or intuitive, but what was important for me to realize is that we are all intuitives. We're all able. It's not a trait, it's an ability, and it's universal.
Thank you.
So everybody can be intuitive. And it was kind of like separating people into those who understand and those who don't, but it's really not like that. So, but I know it's really popular at the moment, and a lot of people like define all of their life choices. I know personally, I know some people that do that. They define all of their life choices, and they put this huge gap based on this trait, this huge gap between them and the rest of the world. And I think it is flawed. As like most personality theories, personality trait theories, like it needs it needs to be criticized because
Yep.
we are more than just one personality. It depends on the
Mhm.
context, of course. We
Mhm.
might be a certain person when we're out with our friends, but when we're at Christmas time with our family, we're a different person. And so we changed based on context. And
Mhm.
yeah, you can't just define all of your behavior based on traits that were
Mhm.
defined on what you remember from your behavior. It's like a circle, kind of
Yeah.
doesn't really make sense.
Yeah.
So,
Thank you for bringing that up, Anthony. I think you're touching something very important here that let's not let a test that you take online based on what you remember of your quality traits define who you are. And
mhm.
most importantly, that it's a spectrum. Like we'll behave in certain ways, or we'll be maybe more intuitive in certain situations. And I love that you said that intuition is innate and it's for everyone. It's not this mystical thing that only fortune tellers can have. And that's kind of like one of the goals that I'm trying to emphasize with this podcast, is to kind of like bring it. I don't know if the word normalize, I don't like to use the word, but kind of just bring some light on that concept and make people realize that, oh, I can be intuitive too. And that's what I do in my coaching, is I kind of like make people be aware of that and tune into that ability of theirs and hone it like you would
Yeah, exactly.
any skill like basketball or playing tennis. Some
Exactly,
people are
exactly.
better
We all
than
have it.
others, but yeah, that's it.
But training makes
Yeah,
practice makes
practice
perfect.
makes
Yes, that's
perfect.
the
Yeah,
saying. Yes.
absolutely. And
Yeah.
another
Well,
thing
well, thank you for shedding some light upon it. I think it's a super interesting subject,
Mm,
and yeah, we need to use it more clearly.
clearly.
Um, yeah, yeah, yeah.
And
And using
yeah,
dreams just in the same way, it's like a
that's
gift
it.
from our subconscious. To not listen to it would be like receiving a letter from a friend and not
Mhm.
opening it, just putting it in the trash. Like, yeah,
I like that
we need
analogy.
to listen to
Yeah,
it.
and sometimes that letter, because I find something you mentioned with dreams and also intuition, it speaks symbolically. And that's something to remember, that you won't get like circle the answer is B. That's not how dreams work, right? So that letter might not be a written letter, but it might be some diagram with different colors. And there's a little bit of room for interpretation as well with dreams and intuition, I
Absolutely.
find, right?
Yeah. And I know there's like a million memes on how crazy dreams are, and like they appear completely impossible to interpret sometimes. But it's really not about the form, they like the visual image they give. It's the
Mm,
patterns you see. It's the symbolic, of
mm,
course. You have to read between the lines,
mm.
and not everybody can do it, but you are your best guess because you are yourself. So only you know that this experience as a waitress was actually traumatic. Although for people outside, it's like, well, it wasn't war, wasn't Vietnam. Like, how could it be traumatic? But only you know. So
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah.
So
Thank
practice your intuition.
Thank
Listen
you
to
for
your
making me feel
intuition.
better about that experience. I'm not the only one though. I can say I've spoken to other servers and they were like, yeah, that's just normal. That's what happens. I'm like, oh geez. So Anthony, if people want to know more about you, but what you do, I know you got some summit coming up in Montreal. It's the sixth IASD regional symposium in Montreal. So it's a dream symposium essentially in August that you'll be
Yes.
a guest speaker there as well.
Yeah, I'll be a guest speaker at that event, and I'm co-organizing it. Yeah, so
Okay.
if you want to see me in person, I'll be at that
Yes.
event. It's on August 12th. It will be in Montreal. It will be in French though, so English speakers beware. Yeah, and we'll talk about everything about dreams, about dream engineering,
Mhm.
about like dreams in palliative care, dreams in like all types of dreams and their applications. It's going to be super interesting. And if you want to see me virtually, I also have a website
Yes.
that goes by myname.com. It's Anthony Levasseur, my name.com. So very easy to find, and like there's a bunch
It,
of
it will
information about me
be,
and
it
how to
will be,
contact me.
yeah, I was sorry to interrupt. It will be in the bio. I'll add all those links as well. So it's an easy click for our
Okay.
listeners if they want to get in touch with you for maybe some potential even research. Anthony, it was such a pleasure to have you. You're such a brilliant mind. That was one thing that struck me when I first met you in that research context, and then we started to go on about dreams, and I was like, that's it. That's it. So thank you so much for sharing your knowledge and your observation and everything with us today. It was a pleasure.
I am so flattered. Thank you so much for receiving me. I enjoyed this interview greatly. So anytime you want to connect again, I'd be glad to.
Absolutely. We might do a sequel, because you mentioned dream engineering. And I'm like, that's another topic on its own. So
yeah.
Who knows, we'll have maybe or if anyone's listening and you have some questions, please, you can always email me as well. And if you have any questions that could be leading to any future podcasts, please ask away, and that could be maybe a sequel. So yeah, I'm always open to suggestion. All right. So thank you, everyone. Thank you for tuning in, Intuitive You podcast, and we'll see you in the next episode. Thanks, Anthony.